with Bucci.
That's right. Thank you for having me. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to talk about this program. I've spoken about it several times, so a few of you may have heard this before. To talk to you about what drug court is, really what I need to do is tell you where we were in the past before Governor Deal instituted criminal justice reforms. It's surprising to most people to hear that between 1990 and 2011, we more than doubled the number of inmates in our state prison system in just 2 decades. We more than doubled them. We hit a high of about 56,000 people incarcerated in our state prisons. That doesn't include county jails or city jails. That's a lot. When he took office, he was told that he was going to have to build 2 new prisons. And that's not cheap. It's not cheap to build them. It's not cheap to maintain them. We were at, in 2011, 107% prison capacity. And the projection was that between 2011 and this year, we were going to grow at an additional 8%. That would add $264 million on top of the budget from 2011 that was already over $1 billion, okay? So in these 2 decades, 1990 to 2011, we more than doubled the number of inmates, and we took a budget item, $492 million, I think, per year, corrections, and more than doubled it. It was the second fastest growing budgetary item. Who wants to guess the first? Healthcare. Healthcare. It was absolutely unsustainable. And the other thing that was noticed by people in the know is that some of the folks we were locking up probably weren't the best people to be locking up. Now, Mr. Donovan is not a softie. I'm not a softie. We understand that prison is appropriate for a lot of people, but we also understand it's not appropriate for everybody. So in 2012, the Special Counsel on Criminal Justice Reform issued its report and recommendations, and the #1 recommendation was to institute a network of accountability courts across the state. What's an accountability court? Donovan told you there's different types. He mentioned DUI courts, Veterans Court. What we started is a drug court, and we have a team. Mr. Donovan has given us a representative on the team. I'm the drug court judge. In addition to I handle the same caseload as the other judges. Criminal cases, domestic, civil cases, but I also have this program. And so the team is me, someone from the DA's office, someone from the public defender's office. We have a drug court coordinator. We have a dedicated treatment provider. We have someone, Gary Gullich has given us a member of the team. And we get together every Friday morning. And when we do exactly what Dick and I saw them doing in Whitfield County when we made that trip. We review potential candidates for the program, and we look for people who are at the end of their rope, people with long histories of criminal activity and addiction. We're not letting sex offenders into the program. We're not letting violent offenders. We're not letting these big traffickers into the program. Like I said, prison's appropriate for some people, but not for everybody. So the people that we're letting in are people with serious addiction problems, not the casual user. People who have been addicted, they're sick and tired of being sick and tired, as I said. Those are the folks that we let in. And every Friday, we consider who we're letting in, and then individually, we go down the list. How did this person do this week? How did that person do? After the meeting, I go and I take the bench. And what Dick's describing, what he saw yesterday, is what we do every Friday. Everybody has to face the judge. And so they come into court, I'll call them up individually, spend a couple minutes with each one. My first question is normally, how was your week? If they've had a good week, I can reward them. If they've had a bad week, they might not leave court that day. They may be taken into custody. It's a bit of tough love. The program is an 18-month minimum program. Nobody's going to make it through that quickly. We know that. Okay, if you make it through that quickly, you probably weren't a serious enough addict to come into the program. And we divide it up into 5 phases. Let me give you an idea of what this looks like. And as I've said before, this is not a touchy-feely program. This is more comparable to a boot camp. It's that intense. People come in, we're going to test them for drug use at least 3 times a week. That could be a knock on the door at midnight. That could be show up at probation. That could be a phone call, show up at the courthouse. We test them at least 3 times a week. As I've mentioned, they've got to face me every Friday. Coming into the program, they're expected and required to attend group treatment 4 days a week. Our treatment is a little different. It's a little different than normal treatment because people can walk out of treatment. They can say, I don't need it anymore, whatever. You can't walk out of our treatment. You walk out of drug court treatment, you're walking into jail. We can force them to stay in treatment. They can't even be late. If they're late, they're looking at a fine, community service, or worse. We can make them show up for treatment. Our treatment focuses not just on addiction, but on criminal thinking. I asked the question, is that the same fly that landed on Hillary's face? I'm wondering.
Well, he's dead.
Is that right?
He died of natural causes.
We treat, you got my son laughing. We treat not only the addiction, but criminal thinking. I spoke at the chamber about 6 weeks ago and asked the question, if you take a drug-addicted criminal and you sober him or her up, what do you got?
Sober
criminal. Sober criminal, which is an improvement, but you've got a ways to go. We target the person as a whole, okay? When they show up in court, these fellas need to be wearing a tie. Some of them have been in the program 6 months, they still can't tie it. Some of these folks have never worn a tie before. The ladies have to dress appropriate, so do the guys. They've got to be on time. That's pretty fundamental, but that's a life skill. Show up on time. We treat the person. In addition to the group therapy, once a month they're going to get an individual session. Once a month they're going to get a family session. And we don't accept excuses. They show up alone, it's a family session, they didn't bring a family member, a friend, somebody, there's a penalty. They have to attend 12-step meetings 3 times a week. If they get behind, they better make it up the next week. They've got to start their job search in phase 1, and they better have a job by phase 2. Part of our goal is to turn tax burdens into taxpayers. You come in facing prison, you leave with a job. If they don't have a GED, they need to get to work on it. They have a curfew. These folks can earn their way up from phase to phase to phase, but they've got to earn it. We'll loosen the curfew gradually as they earn it. They've got to pay a program fee of $35 a week. They got to have some skin in the game. And if they get behind, we're not going to let them phase up, okay? It's very demanding. We're new. We've been doing this not quite a year. The highest that we have anybody is in phase 3 of 5, okay? But we're seeing success. I can tell you that right now, 5 years after Governor Deal, 5-6 years after Governor Deal started this, prison populations are down. From that high of 56,000, we're down to about 52,000. And he didn't have to build those 2 prisons. We're still sending people to prison, but the concentration in the prison, it's different. It's a higher percentage of violent offenders. We're using the limited resources that we have for the people who really need to be taken out of society. Other folks who are nonviolent, they're being shown a different option in programs such as this. It costs $50 a day to keep somebody in prison. It costs $13 a day for a community-based program such as ours. The cost savings are there, and we're realizing them. For every dollar that is spent in an accountability court, the criminal justice system realizes a savings of $2.21. That is a 221% return on investment, and that's government that's doing that. Recidivism, the average, and you'll see numbers all over the board, but when somebody comes out of prison, within 3 years, 30 to 50% of them are going to be rearrested. If you're looking at a drug-involved offender, go ahead and kick that up to about 75%, okay? So this program is achieving results. If somebody successfully completes a drug court program, we can cut that 75% recidivism rate about in half, okay? We save money, we help the person, we improve societies. Dick mentioned a gentleman yesterday who had phased up. I can't tell you if he's going to complete the program. I've heard from other judges half the people can't make it through. Half the people can't. I can't tell you where he's going to be next year. But here's where he was yesterday. One of the things he has to do when coming into court and saying, can I phase up, he's got to give us a little essay. Tell me why. And he gave me permission to read this. I told him I wouldn't use his name. I've maintained a full-time job 8 months, even though I haven't been able to get perfect scores across the board per drug court standard and policies. I do have a better understanding of the rules and regulations. I was a complete and utter mess coming into the program, broke physically and spiritually. I know that my pain pill addiction had a lot to do with it, and that I wasn't me, the person who I am truly. I'm only hoping that the staff hasn't judged me, I'm reading it just like he wrote it, on certain actions that I've made coming into the program, being prescribed high doses and coming off of them while in drug court. I do understand from the beginning why I wrote essays on responsibility, honesty, and respect. Example, having oral surgery, getting prescribed pain meds, and not following through with procedures. From this point on, and God willing, I'll make my recovery first. I've been through hell the past 5 years. Jail, near death, and institutions, but today, and just for today, I'm sober. That's what we're doing with this program.